What y'all listening to?
Limelight Highlight Podcast.
Welcome back to the show, your positive podcast, safe space and great place for a positive outlook on life. How's it going? It's been a few weeks since we talked. Between the holiday season and all the craziness going on in my personal life, I haven't really gotten the chance to get an episode in. This is the last episode of the year, obviously. And with the new year just a couple days away, and a ton of things going on in the world, especially 2020 finally coming to an end, I was having trouble figuring out what to talk about. You know, part of me wanted to share resources that could help people during the holiday season. But then the holiday season kind of just passed because all we have is New Year's left. But then I had to figure out what resources were available nationwide. And then because of my audience growing to reach more than just the US, I would have to find out what resources were available worldwide. You know, just a humble brag there. But, you know, I got to include my busy schedule. I was actually feeling extremely overwhelmed. So instead, I'd like to do a little quick recap of this episode will be a recap of the year and give you some insight on why I've been so busy, what we have planned for the new year, and what to expect on our third year coming. But before that, let's start this episode like every other episode with your unrelated fun fact. This week's unrelated fun fact is about roosters. You know, that annoying call that all roosters do that cockle-doodle-doo when they wake up, or when they do it, everybody wakes up around them. They wake up everything and anything in the morning specifically. Quick side story, actually. My good friends Tyler and Alice, they have chickens. They finally got some chickens and stuff, and they get their eggs from, and they actually had a rooster walking around. But apparently he was real aggressive with everyone and annoying. So, you know, he ended up as a lemon crusted chicken parm. That's how annoying and loud these things can be. But that's just the side story. I just thought that was a funny story because everybody I know who has chickens, they actually have a rooster walking around, and they're always really aggressive with people. But I know growing up in North Philly, people have chickens and roosters, and them things are super annoying. But anyway, here's your fun fact. A rooster's call can reach up to 140 decibels or louder. And if you recall from previous episodes around, you know, about the sun, the sound of the sun, then you know that the decibel level can impair your hearing. Well, it turns out that roosters have built-in earplugs. Researchers found that when a rooster opens its beak to crow, its external auditory canal closes off, preventing sound from coming in and in turn serving as earplugs. So that's kind of a wild fact. You know, I guess that's why they can be so damn loud. Every time they open their mouths, everything around them is quiet because they can't hear shit. But anyway, just in case you come across a rooster, remember, it's always annoying to the person hearing the sound and not really the one making it. But anyway, let's get started with today's show. So, where should I start? How about with an explanation as to why I haven't put out an episode as of late? I feel like I at least owe y'all an explanation, because even with me not putting out an episode for the past 2 weeks, the loyal listeners of this podcast are still actually listening. I get analytics from my host site every Sunday, and I think I was explaining this to Tommy from The Block Is Back a while ago. I remember that there was a time where I was excited to have 20 downloads for an episode for that whole week. I was like super stoked. Oh, snap, 20 people are listening. And now I'm getting that in a day. Not the goal number that I'm looking for, but we're growing at a steady pace, so it's something positive to look at. Now, without an episode that I haven't put out for the last 2 weeks, I'm still getting over 20 downloads a week, which means that the word is spreading and I'm still getting some listeners. So that, that's a reason to continue doing what I'm doing. It makes me feel good. But back to the reason why I haven't put out an episode. I'm in the middle of selling my house, between the holiday season, putting my house up on the market, packing because we sold the house in like 6 days, figuring out where to move all our stuff, and then at the same time having a full-time job, and of course everything decides to break during this time, just especially this time of year. So I'm spending even more time at work. Needless to say, it's been a pretty crazy end of the year. And if you want to call that an excuse or reason, that's why I haven't put out an episode. I'm kind of burnt out, I usually write all my scripts as well for the podcast episode, just so I know I can stay on track. But I'm kind of riffing here. I got bullet points and stuff that I'm just my thoughts, But I promised myself that I would put out one last episode, to close out the year, and well, here we are, So now back to recapping this year. The first episode of this year was about resolution and goals. I didn't go back to listen to all of them because, well, as I just explained, I don't have that kind of time. And I don't worry about going over every single episode because, you can just go back and do it yourself if you really wanted to. But I'm just going to talk about some of those honorable mentions of some of my favorite episodes that I've done. But like I said, New Year's resolution, so pretty cliche. But the next episode was my 2-year anniversary episode that the next episode I want to talk about is my 2-year anniversary episode that my wife and I did together. We spoke about plans for the future of this podcast. And from what I remember, a lot of these came true, to having more guests, to being more involved in doing, positive work rather than just speaking about it. The more I think about this past year, the more I realize when I say I'm going to do something, 8 out of 10 times I'm going to follow through and do it. I am notorious for never finishing things. I know I always start things. Like I have a ton of things that I've started and I've never actually finished. My wife always kind of, gets on my back about it for a good reason because I start things and I don't finish it. If I don't like it or I'm not interested, I don't want to, if it doesn't bring me pleasure, I don't continue to do it. But, I've been saying I'm going to add videos and all that, but that might just be something coming up for the new year. Anyway, fast forward to, the dreaded month of March, as far as recap of this year, where all of our lives change in some major way or minor way. And that is exactly what I wanted to focus more on, really, for this episode. This whole year, as terrible as it's been for some people, has a ton of silver linings that I really want to highlight and remind everybody of. One of the major changes has to do with the Block Gives Back and how they've spent almost every single Saturday feeding anyone and everyone who's hungry while supplies last on their Feed the Block event that's been going on consecutively. Successfully, I might add, too. This is one of my more favorite silver linings of this pandemic. Because of the lockdowns, everyone's forced to stay home. Another thing I had to do was get creative with having people on the show. It's forced me to grow, and I had my first remote podcast with the Basement Binge, that movie review podcast, who happened to also be one of my go-to shows now that I listen to, that I really look forward to every time they put an episode out. I was also a guest on their show, so you can check that out if you'd like. With the craziness that was this year, we also discussed racial, injustices while protests and riots were breaking out all over the nation and even in other countries. We were joined by my longtime friend, Zeke, from my early, first podcasting days to speak on his experience and some of the ideas that we both have moving forward. One of my good ones was Gil from the Sober Powered podcast, speaking on her journey through recovery. Where I know tons of people, since she's actually put out her podcast, have subscribed and listened to, and she's getting a lot of traction because of her extensive knowledge. A lot of people who can relate actually get a lot of good information from her podcast because she gives you a scientific reason as to why addiction is a biologically driven change instead of a choice as some ignorant people still like to think it is. I had the amazing opportunity to speak with Jacqueline from the Other 100, who was all the way in Singapore or Malaysia. I think it was Malaysia. That would not have happened if it weren't for this pandemic. If people don't know, the Other 100 is where they put a list of the top 100 people doing positive things to help those in their surroundings. And if anybody fits the template for who I want as a guest on this podcast, it's definitely her. We fast forward to the Block to School event in August, where everything kind of ramped up and changed. Thanks to the guys, thanks to Tommy, Hakeem, all the guys from the Block is Back, where I got to talk to many new nonprofit organizations and people who took the opportunity to try to make an impact due to the virus. People like Jess from JKL Smiles, who supplies free dental kits to kids in Philadelphia, and happens to be a grassroots organization that was created because of the pandemic. It's another silver lining in through all this craziness that I wanted to highlight. Another couple of grassroots organizations go to people like Alicia and V from Femme Fighters, as well as TJ, from Love Money, who's given out that $1,000 to small business owners in spite of the pandemic. Denise and Bill from Spark Life gave us a little bit of a different perspective on how addiction hurts more than just a person. It stems to their families, their friends, their loved ones. We've had Shantae Douglas, who's an author and an advocate for autism awareness. She shared her story, her life experiences. Buddha and all he does for his community through Power Circle Mentors. To even being extremely inspired to support local businesses, local food restaurants by having Mike View on from Pancakes and Protein Shakes. One of the most selfless people gaining a lot of attention is Josh from Empowering Cuts, going around cutting hair for zero monetary gain. And as terrible as this pandemic has been, it's really given me the opportunity to grow as a host, to be featured on other podcasts, and given the opportunity to sit in front of some people, some of the most positive people. And if anything, I hope the listeners get out of this podcast. It's the feeling that I get when I record these episodes. I talk to a lot of people. I report on a lot of good news. And in spite of all the bad that's going around, the work the Block is Back has done, not only to serve their community in more than one way, but to work closely with me and getting these amazing people on the show to share how they are making the world a better place is more than I could ever ask for. I keep saying it takes a community. It's also another reason why you hear me rant and rave about the Block is Back on just about every podcast episode. Even on harder days where I don't want to focus on positivity. It's hard to be positive, especially in the world we're living in today, where everything's in your face, everything's negative, just craziness going on all around. I have trouble posting about anything positive sometimes, but the Block is Back is a constant reminder that we need to do the work because so many people depend on them. Yes, they provide food, they provide goods, they provide some resources to those in need, but they also provide a sense of community, a moment of relief to those struggling with homelessness, food scarcity. I can only hope that what I provide in sharing these stories, is that whoever's listening, they gain a sense of relief. They gain the same thing that the Block provides. They gain a little bit of positivity, a different point of view of life from the terrible doom and gloom. As I said before on this podcast, if this podcast can influence just one person to make a positive change in their lives, whether it be just a change in mindset, whether they want to change whatever they focus on, or if it inspires somebody to create their own nonprofit or small but effective solution to a problem that they see in their community, then I've done my job. Then this podcast has served its purpose. It only takes one person to make a change. And the minute you do something positive, the chances that a chain reaction is going to increase. To Today is going to be a really short episode. It's just a, really quick recap. I didn't prepare too much for this episode. It's mostly just me ranting and raving about all the stuff that's been going on this year. I've been really inspired this past